So the Chiefs are intentionally focusing on something the offense lost in recent years, and that is the deep ball. We knew when they signed Hollywood Brown and drafted Xavier Worthy, the goal was to bring back elite speed, but they've been really emphasizing the deep ball early on in OTAs. So let's talk about that and much more. But first, how about those? All right, first up, we have a couple of interesting signings that happened today. And while neither of these signings I'm about to mention are players that actually signed with the Chiefs, they are both former Chiefs players. The first one up here is running back LaMichael Perine, the 26-year-old running back that the Chiefs, surprisingly, to me at least, released last week to make room for defensive tackle Matt Dickerson. Perine was a guy I thought could maybe sneak onto the roster, fighting for that running back 3 spot, but nope. He gone and is now with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yes, they announced today around noon Central. He signed a 1-year deal, so hey, I wish the guy the best of luck in his next chapter, taking handoffs from either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. Then a former Chief legend, the very definition of the word, signed with an NFC contender today. I use air quotes on contender because their fall off in the second half of the season last year was one of the worst I've ever seen, mainly due to them having an incapable head coach in Dick Sirianni. But yes, the Philadelphia Eagles have signed the speedy and former Combine 40 record holder prior to Xavier Worthy, John Ross. And now that you know who it is I'm talking about, you also know that I'm trolling around about him being a Chiefs legend. Last year, he retired, quote-unquote retired, just 3 or 4 days into Andy Reid's training camp. The poor guy couldn't take it and said, "No thank you, I'm hanging up the cleats." Well, he's had a change of heart and is now getting another shot with the Eagles. And one thing I'm never going to forget about John Ross is the fact that he was drafted just 1 pick before Patrick Mahomes by the Cincinnati Bengals. Poor impoverished franchises do poor impoverished things. But hey, thank you for that and the other 8 teams who decided to pass on Patrick Mahomes outside of the Bengals, because now the Chiefs have a dynasty on their hands due to these teams' negligence. Next up, Patrick Mahomes appeared on the Pat McAfee show today, even though I think the interview was technically filmed yesterday, and there was some pretty good takeaways from this one, including the reason why I think the Chiefs' offense of old, well, not that old, but the Chiefs' offense that was truly one to be feared as a legitimate deep threat is back again. Mahomes shared he's excited about the newly formed offense and getting to see some of these guys in action. He listed off some of the tight ends, Travis, of course, the newly drafted Jared Wiley, as well as Noah Gray. Someone he didn't mention directly was Irv Smith Jr., but he reportedly caught a couple of red zone TD passes during OTAs this week himself. Then there's obviously the first-round pick, Xavier Worthy, who sadly only practiced half of the 3 days due to tweaking his hamstring in some capacity. Then Mahomes mentioned the newly acquired Hollywood Brown, a guy he leaned on more heavily with Worthy out of the mix. More on that in a bit. And then, of course, they still have Rashee Rice. Rice practiced all week and got plenty of work in himself. Now, regarding the newly formed offense, Mahomes said he wants to be smart pushing the ball down the field this season, but he wants to be explosive again offensively like they have been in the past. He really wants to emphasize getting back to the deep passing game and pushing the envelope. He missed some deep balls last year. We all know that he missed some deep balls, okay? You don't have to remind us, but if you look at his stats, Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest posted this. Listen to this. Last year, the long ball game fell apart for the Chiefs. Mahomes completed 28.6% of his passes more than 20 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, with just 1 touchdown and a career-worst 6 interceptions for a meager passer rating of 34.1. That is underwhelming to say the least, and it made complete sense why defenses didn't respect the deep ball at all whatsoever. And that's why Mahomes wants to get on the same page with the new guys ASAP, Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown in particular. That will help take the pressure off the defense that, God bless them, carried the team to several W's in some key games last year. And that's why Nate Taylor of The Athletic said nearly half of Mahomes' attempts Wednesday during the 7-on-7 period featured the ball traveling more than 20 yards downfield. You've got to work on it, and you've got to be better than last year. So this is clearly an emphasis for the team, even early on during these OTA periods. Nate Taylor actually went on to share that early on in this 7-on-7 period, Mahomes attempted to target Rashee Rice in the middle of the field, but got picked off by cornerback Kelvin Joseph. However, listen to this. A few plays later, or a few reps later, however you want to word it, Mahomes unleashed his best pass of the period, an arching deep ball with perfect velocity and touch. Mahomes targeted Marquise Brown with Hollywood sprinting past two defenders, adjusting his route to Mahomes' pass, and made a one-handed touchdown reception, his right hand securing the ball as he fell in the back of the end zone against trailing coverage from safety Deion Bush, and Brown leaps up, celebrating, lifting his head, and screaming loud enough for each of his teammates to hear him. I mean, if that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what will. A speedy receiver who can burn people, track the ball, and catch it, even if he needs only one hand to do so. Sure, bud, no problem. I got you, Patty Mahomes. And that's without Xavier Worthy out there on the field at the moment, who again tweaked his hamstring, and the team held him out simply as a precaution more than anything else. But just imagine once Worthy is out there taking the top off the defense as well. This is going to be a very worrisome offense. You've got the speed guys in Hollywood and Worthy keeping defensive backs honest. Then you have Rice and Trav in the middle of the field picking apart defenses. Take your poison here, who again has Patrick Mahomes, QB1 of the entire league, picking apart these defenses. I mean, if you double team Trav and leave one of these other guys open, or vice versa, double some of these other guys and leave Kelsey one-on-one, that's a recipe for a disaster. Good luck with that. That's not even including the fact that if teams focus too much on KC's passing game, Isaiah Pacheco could eat defenses alive if they choose not to stack the box, which they probably won't more times than not. Then there's another new guy in tight end Jared Wiley, a guy Mahomes quickly found for a score during red zone period with Nick Bolton in coverage. This is a guy that Mahomes yesterday said is quick down the field and faster than people think he is. And with him learning from Travis Kelce along the way this season, I sure do like the sound of that. According to Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest, Mahomes also found tight end Irv Smith Jr. a couple of times. I mentioned that earlier, but you can't sleep on that tight end either. He also found Justin Ross in the back corner of the end zone via a nice typical Mahomes sidearm sling off of his back foot. I have no idea what to make of Justin Ross at this point in time, if he's going to make the 53 or not. But I will say this, his odds definitely go up if Rashee Rice is going to start out the season suspended, having to miss roughly half of the season. Honestly, that is the biggest wrench in the offense and the biggest frustration. With all these new weapons combined with players that are returning, like Kelsey and Rice, in theory, this offense is absolutely deadly. But with Rice potentially missing half the season, that does remove a definite weapon and is freaking frustrating when you consider the fact that this entire situation could have been avoided altogether. But it is what it is at this point. The new guys are going to be forced to step up sooner rather than later, so maybe that's a good thing. I'm just looking at the glass half full here. Anyway, if we get back to this Mahomes interview on the Pat McAfee show, after Patrick talked about the emphasis of bringing the deep ball back, overall, the goal for them is just to be more consistent this year, week in and week out, and better overall as a team. Yes, they are coming off back-to-back Super Bowl wins, but in spite of that, Mahomes feels like they still have a lot to work on, which honestly is great to hear because it means this team, yes, they are very successful, but they are also not growing complacent in spite of the success. Mahomes was then asked about the Chiefs' schedule this year and having to play some very tough opponents very early on. Week 1 against the Ravens and that AFC Championship rematch, and then Week 2 against the Bengals and most likely a healthy Joe Burrow. Mahomes basically said it doesn't matter who they play and when they play him. The goal is to simply put their best foot forward each and every week. However, they got to be better early on this season compared to last year. You guys remember that Week 1 loss to the Lions? It definitely was not the best way to start the season. He did mention that although he's fine to play anyone, anytime, he's definitely not the biggest fan of having a Week 6 bye. That's the earliest he's ever had a bye week in his career, so that's definitely a tough one. In 2018, they had a bye in Week 12, same with 2019. The next year was a Week 10 bye in 2020. Then in 2021, they went back to a Week 12 bye. 2022 was a bit earlier than the rest, being Week 8. And then last year, KC had a bye week after the Germany game, which was Week 9, making that a Week 10 bye. So yeah, the earliest bye week prior to 2024 was Week 8 back in 2022, and you ideally don't want to bye earlier than that, but 2024 is now a new record, a Week 6 bye, which I do agree is pretty rough. Regardless of that, Mahomes mentioned from the start of this interview that he knows how lucky he is to be in the situation he's in. He's grateful to be here in Kansas City with the GOAT, he didn't say the GOAT, but I am, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, among others, in the midst of a dynasty chasing a three-peat, and definitely does not take all that for granted.
I understand how lucky I am, man. I don't want to look back and have regrets, man. I want to win as many Super Bowls as possible, and it's hard every single year, but I just try to be driven every single day to be the best that I can be, and I'm lucky to be in this position, and I'm going to try to do whatever I can to maximize that.
And with all that being said, let me know your thoughts on the Chiefs' dynamic new offense in the midst of this dynasty and how you feel like things will play out for them this season, even with the Rice suspension looming. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?